Hi, everyone. Welcome to our webinar on ransomware attacks. We are very glad that you could make time today to learn about this important topic. The format of our webinar is as follows. First, we will go over the cyber attack landscape and sorry, let me just move my windows around. All right, so we will go over the cyber attack landscape in general, and also we will focus primarily on ransomware. So that in particular, we will focus on ransomware. Then we will discuss what we can do to prevent ransomware attacks on our critical assets. And afterwards, we will have a live demo showing how Ridgebot can detect ransomware-related vulnerabilities and basically protect you from such attacks. So we will start with the cyber attack landscape. So I would like to actually start with a question first. What is one of the biggest challenges that are facing us over the next couple of decades, so the next 20 years? As some of you may have guessed, it's cybercrime. The Cybersecurity Ventures website that publishes the Cybercrime magazine estimates that cybercrime will cost the world $10.5 trillion annually by 2025. The estimate for this year, 2023, is $8 trillion annually. So as you can see, this heavy cost continues to go up every year. It's really mind-blowing. Let's try to zoom in on one specific type of cybercrime, which is the focus of our webinar today, that is ransomware. So I'll use a few key data points about ransomware from Verizon's 2022 data breach investigation report. This year, ransomware has continued its upward trend with almost 13% increase. That means this rise is as big as the last 5 years combined. Also, it's important for us to remember that ransomware by itself is really nothing but just a model of monetizing an organization's access. So that's what the hackers are after. Blocking the key paths for hackers to get to the sensitive data, which we'll talk about shortly, will help you block the most common routes ransomware uses to invade your network. Let's look at a few interesting data points about ransomware from Gartner. So I won't go over everything that you see here, just a few of them that I want to bring to your attention. First one is that if you've been a victim of ransomware attack already, there's an 80% chance that you will be targeted again within a 90-day period. So if you've been attacked once, don't feel that, okay, now I'm good for the next few years. No, within 90 days, the statistics show that within 90 days, you are likely to get attacked again. Also, 1/3 of the organizations opt to pay the ransom to the bad guys, the hackers, because losing their data is just not an option for them. That's also really, really shocking. So 1/3 of the victims go ahead and pay the ransom. And the next point I want to bring to your attention is that there's a possibility that 35% of your data may be lost due to corruption. So as you can see, unless you properly mitigate the risk of ransomware attacks in your organization, it can be a very costly attack. And despite you paying the ransom, you may still lose some of your data. Mitigating the risk of getting ransomware attacks involves adopting different security practices. I want to mention in particular, continuous ongoing assessment of your IT assets security posture, and also smart assessment. I want to underscore smart assessment of your IT asset security posture. When we say continuous assessment, we often think about automation. And when we say smart assessment, we often think about artificial intelligence, AI. We will talk about both of these topics shortly. First, let's get to know a little more about ransomware, the most common types. So REvil attacks account for 15% of total ransomware attacks. If you do a Google search on REvil, you will also notice that a lot of times they go after high-profile organizations or people. So 3 out of 10 high-profile ransomware attacks are done by REvil. Many analysts believe that the group that maintains REvil is based in Russia. And there are some speculations about some of the group members getting arrested and their website going offline. In addition to REvil, as you can see in the diagram, there are a number of other attacks also. One of them that I want to bring to your attention is Phobos. Phobos accounts for 7 or 8% of the ransomware attacks. The reason I mentioned Phobos is because we saw Phobos in our neighbor's network a number of months ago. Our neighbor is you can think of him as a nameless SMB, and they got Phobos ransomware attacks last May. We wrote a number of blogs to share their story and to warn that even SMBs are not exempt from ransomware attacks. There are 4 key paths that lead to your sensitive data. So that's what you see on the right side of the slide. We have credentials, we have phishing attacks, we have exploitation of software vulnerabilities, and we have botnets. And I should say that no organization is safe without having a concrete plan to handle all of these. All right, so let's move forward with what can we do about this. I will start with this chart from Gartner's latest Hype Cycle for Security Operations report. This was published in July of last year. In this report, you can clearly see that for the first time, Gartner has put automated pen testing and red teaming as an emerging technology. That means as a new and independent product category. So Gartner is expecting that this product category will get more and more attention from the market and will have a fast growth. Also, Gartner has recognized Ridge Security as one of the key players in this new market. As you can see, I've highlighted the name on the slide. Our automated pen testing product, Ridgebot, has an AI-driven, artificial intelligence-driven decision engine. It was initially released in early 2020, which is about 1.5 years before Gartner introduced the new automated pen testing product category. So we are very excited that we shared the same vision as Gartner analysts, that automated penetration testing will be the new market trend. So earlier I mentioned about the need to do continuous ongoing assessment of your IT assets security posture, as well as smart assessment of your IT asset security posture. That's precisely the reason Ridgebot was born. With today's technology advancement in both artificial intelligence and cybersecurity, having a product like Ridgebot is made possible. So Ridgebot, you can think of it as being actually the marriage of artificial intelligence and cybersecurity knowledge base. Ridgebot is modeled with a collective knowledge of threats, vulnerabilities, and most importantly, exploits of the vulnerabilities. It is equipped with state-of-the-art hacking techniques, and we keep enhancing these techniques. We keep adding to them. Ridgebot acts as a real attacker. That means it relentlessly locates, exploits, and documents its findings. it works tirelessly around the clock. Being a software, it can work 24/7. It automates penetration testing, and it makes it affordable as a reason. And also it makes it possible to run pen testing at scale and to run it as frequently as you want. So to recap, thanks to the AI-driven decision engine of Ridgebot, which is RidgeBrain, Ridgebot thinks and acts like a hacker. And this indeed, we can say, is your best defense, to think like a hacker. We looked at the 4 key attack paths for ransomware earlier. Out of these 4, Ridgebot is well equipped to block 2 of these attack paths. These are the weak credentials and also the software vulnerability exploits. Now, here I'm referring to those vulnerabilities that are commonly used in ransomware attacks. In Ridgebot, we have an extensible architecture where the job of scanning the vulnerabilities and attempting to exploit them is done by small units of code, which we call plugins. You can think of a plugin as a piece of code that knows how to detect one vulnerability, or I should say one family of related vulnerabilities, and also how to exploit them. So that's what a plugin does. It focuses on one vulnerability or a family of related vulnerabilities. For ransomware attack pen testing, we currently have 215 plugins for software vulnerabilities that are often exploited in ransomware attacks. That's a large number. In addition to that, we also have 55 plugins for detecting weak credentials across a variety of protocols and applications. And I should also add that more plugins will continuously get added to the list as new vulnerabilities get discovered. So in Ridgebot, a scenario represents a specific use case. So here I'm showing a screenshot of Ridgebot with a list of built-in scenarios. The built-in scenarios, as you can see, they do quote-unquote standard type of use cases, such as website pen testing scenario, host pen testing scenario, weak credential pen testing scenario, and of course, ransomware attack pen testing scenario. We actually offer 2 different flavors of ransomware pen testing scenarios in Ridgebot. The first one includes all ports. The second one, it includes all ports except HTTP and HTTPS. So in other words, we let you decide whether you want to only do host pen testing while you're focusing on ransomware attack vulnerabilities, or you want to do both host and website pen testing. So both flavors are available in Ridgebot. It's very easy to deploy Ridgebot. You can deploy it either as a virtual machine in your environment or in public cloud, for example, AWS, Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud, or you can deploy it as a hardware appliance. You simply have to connect Ridgebot to the network, do some basic network configuration, and then start creating pen testing tasks. Now, tasks are the unit of work in Ridgebot. When I show you the demo, you will see that. Creation of the tasks is pretty much plug and play. It literally takes just a couple of minutes to start the pen testing task from the web UI, which is pretty intuitive. You need to select, of course, the appropriate pen testing scenario. As I mentioned earlier, that represents the use case for your pen testing. And then you specify 1 or more targets to be pen tested. They can be specific targets like servers or websites, or I should say web FQDNs, fully qualified domain names. Or you can also specify a subnet, and Ridgebot will find all the targets in that subnet. Once the pen testing task starts, it performs 4 major steps for each asset target. it does asset profiling, it does attack surface discovery on that asset, on each asset. It does vulnerability scanning on that asset. And most importantly, it attempts to automatically exploit each vulnerability on the asset. And after finishing exploitation, it also attempts to do post-exploitation. So these tests are all performed automatically by using AI. No human interactions are required. Of course, there are some parameters. Optionally, you can configure Ridgebot to ask for your confirmation for some of the attacks, but by default, once you start the task, it does all the work for you. You just come back and look at the report at the end. So no interaction required while the test is ongoing. Now, just to clarify, when I say Ridgebot performs exploitation and post-exploitation, I just want to be a little bit more specific. What I mean is that Ridgebot actually injects payload to each asset and then obtains sensitive information from each asset. It attempts to gain privilege escalation on that asset if possible, depending on the type of vulnerability. And if successful, it makes lateral movement. That means Ridgebot attempts to pivot from that particular asset that it just performed the vulnerability exploitation on and repeat the cycle on other assets deeper inside the network. This is precisely what a real hacker would do out there. So Ridgebot tries to mimic exactly what a hacker does. And after the pen testing is complete, Ridgebot provides comprehensive info about the pen test results in the web UI. And of course, in addition to that, you can opt to generate an extensive pen test report. It could be either PDF or HTML. And I want to mention that this is the type of report, and I will demo this. This is the type of report with the level of detail that would take a human tester a couple of weeks to prepare. So there is lots of valuable information inside. Let's look under the hood a little bit and talk about some of the core technologies that are used in Ridgebot. In this diagram, we start in the top right corner and we go counterclockwise. Ridgebot starts its work in a way similar to vulnerability assessment tools. That means we do asset discovery and we do vulnerability scanning. We find all active IP assets in the list of targets that you specify in Ridgebot GUI. We do asset fingerprinting. We do smart web crawling if it's for website pen testing. We discover all possible attack surfaces and potential vulnerabilities, etc. But I want to mention this, compared to vulnerability assessment tools, which are pretty much static tools, Ridgebot runs very dynamically. It is driven by the AI-powered RidgeBrain, which you see in the center of the diagram. RidgeBrain is a smart decision engine. Every time RidgeBrain gets some new data or information about the test target, RidgeBrain will decide what the best available attack surfaces and also best attack strategies should be at that particular point in time with the information that it has available, again, at that particular point in time. Then it will go ahead and dispatch a set of mini jobs to execute those strategies. These mini jobs, they can be doing 4 different things. They could be either discovering attack surfaces, they could be scanning for vulnerabilities. Most importantly, they could be exploiting vulnerabilities. And lastly, they could be doing post-exploitation or lateral movement, as I mentioned earlier. So the initial test result that RidgeBrain collects may not be that exciting while the work is in progress, but these mini jobs will return some new data each time and new information about the test target, which goes back to the RidgeBrain, and RidgeBrain keeps processing it. So you can think of this as a feedback loop. So RidgeBrain launches these mini jobs and it keeps processing the result of each mini job. And This feedback loop is actually quite important because it would help Ridgebrain to formulate new attack strategies, as I mentioned earlier. I want to mention that this is the process that we call smart decision engine driven iterative attacks. I want to underscore the word iterative attacks. So to recap, the core technologies we developed in Ridgebot are basically the Ridgebrain AI-driven Ridgebrain engine, the automated exploitation attacks, and automated post-exploitation attacks. These differentiate Ridgebot from the rest of the tools in the market. Now, let me just show you very quickly a few screenshots to demonstrate what Ridgebot's advanced technology can offer. Left-hand side screenshot shows a SQL injection vulnerability that was successfully exploited by Ridgebot. It provides, Ridgebot actually provides evidence, proof that the exploitation took place. We are here displaying the SQL database schema, database tables, again, just as an evidence that we were able to access sensitive data. This particular test that you see in this screenshot was done against a publicly available website, testphp.com, which is a public target used for benchmarking purposes. In addition, Ridgebot also shows a complete attack path and kill chain. That's what you see on the right side, the right-hand side screenshot. This would help you figure out whether you should change your access policy to close some ports and therefore block the hacking paths, and long-term, of course, to patch your assets, your system, to remediate the problem. So here you can see screenshots of the pen testing report generated by Ridgebot. You see the executive summary, as well as the GUI page capturing the summary status of a pen testing task. But we will be looking at these in our live demo, so I won't spend too much time on this. Speaking of which, live demo. So before doing that, I want to do a quick poll before I go to the demo. Let's do a quick poll. Let me launch the poll. So you will see 4 questions on your screen. So please take a moment to take the poll right now. Just go through the 4 questions. We'll give everybody 1 more minute. I see some responses coming in. All right, so while more responses coming in, let me just quickly go over the results. The first questions: have you ever experienced a ransomware attack? So we have 80% who said no and 20% who said yes. Second question: which measures has your organization taken to prepare for defending against a ransomware attack? So we have regular backups. 100% said regular backups. That's very good. Very happy to see that. 40% say that regular security posture validation. 40% again say pen testing. That's good to see. 20% say deployed XDR or NDR type solution. 80% deploy firewall. That's very good. And 40% deploy IDS IPS solution, intrusion prevention solution, and 40% deploy endpoint protection tools. And I'm very happy to see that 0% selected the none option. So everybody has been taking some action to to protect themselves against ransomware. The third question, the question is, do you believe ransomware attack simulation testing is helpful for defending against ransomware attacks. 80% said yes, that's very good. And the last question, what operating system most loosely used in your organization? 80% said Windows, and in our audience, 0% said Linux, and 20% said both Windows and Linux. So I will go ahead and end the poll. Thank you again for taking time. So let's move forward with our demo. Now, before the demo, I'll just give a very quick overview of what it is that I'll be focusing on. So there are 3 specific demo scenarios. The first one is the Eternal Blue. This is for Microsoft Windows. I know Microsoft Windows is commonly used, as reflected in the poll also in many organizations. So this is a very nasty vulnerability, Eternal Blue. It's known as MS17-010, and it exploits the SMB protocol, which is very common in Microsoft. It has a CVSS score of 10, which is very, very high. That's the highest. And also, it was the cause of the WannaCry ransomware attack that happened in 2017. So that's one. The second one is also for Windows platform is the Print Nightmare. So this is a critical vulnerability with CVSS score of 8.8. And this one is a remote code execution vulnerability. And I forgot to mention the previous one is also remote code execution vulnerability. That means if it is exploited, then the hackers have full access to your Windows server. They can do anything they want on it. They can browse files, extract sensitive data, and potentially from there attack other assets in your organization. And the third one is the Apache Struts 2 vulnerability. This is also a remote code execution vulnerability. It has a CVSS score of 10, which again is the highest. So let me go ahead and end the presentation and switch over to our user interface. So you can see I'm at the main page of Ridgebot. We are showing a list of all the penetration testing tasks. So yesterday I created some pen testing tasks in preparation for today's webinar. So you can see them listed here. Again, a task is a unit of work in Ridgebot. Let's go through the process of creating a task, see what's involved in doing that. So I click on the create button. The very first thing that I see in front of me is a list of all the pen testing scenarios that I can select from. These are the built-in scenarios. So I go ahead and select ransomware attack simulation. And then here you see that there are 2 red asterisks. These are the 2 required fields. So I have to provide information in these 2 fields. So the first one is a task name. Task name is important because it will become the title of the nice report that we generate at the end. So let's call this ransomware pen testing on asset, and I'll put the IP address of the asset in part of the title. And also the second field that is required for me to provide, of course, is 1 or more IP addresses. These are the assets or the targets that Ridgebot will be attempting to pen test. So there are a number of other fields available. There are many knobs here that you can configure. For example, the port range, the port type, whether you want to use common TCP ports or whether you want to use custom ports, or the type of scan, by default TCP SYN, or you can use TCP ACK, TCP FIN. So there are many other options available. Similarly, for exploitation, there are different options available for brute force, the brute force method, the risk control. However, they all have reasonable default values. So the two required parameters are the ones that I mentioned. Once you do this, you can either go ahead and start running the task right away, or you can actually schedule it to run at a later time, or you can schedule it to run on a frequent basis. For example, you can schedule it to run every week or every month. So I'll go ahead and run this task right now. And you can see that it appeared on top here. It is running. And in a little while, we would look at what's going on inside. We would let it make some progress. Before I look at some other tasks, I want to bring your attention to this column right here. It is the health score column. So what is a health score? Health score is a score for the security posture of all the assets inside your task. A task may have one asset or may have multiple assets. So for the entire task, Ridgebot assigns a score to it. It's a number between 0 and 100. The higher the number, the better. So 100 is a perfect score. That means you don't have anything to worry about. Lower numbers here, as you can see, are also color-coded. They indicate that you have some serious problems that you want to pay attention to. For example, for this particular server here, which happens to be a Windows server, or I should say for this task, pen testing task that was run on a Windows server, the score is 6, which is very low. For this particular one, on one asset, I did the log4j pen testing, the score is 45. Not very good, but also is not as bad as some of the low ones that you see here. All right, so let's actually go ahead and take a look. Let's open one of these and take a look. So I would look at this particular one, Windows Server pen testing that we did. And so notice that up here, we are showing, or maybe I'll go to a better place. I'll go to the summary tab, which shows information about what we have done. We are showing that we have run more than 12,000 mini jobs. These are the mini jobs that I mentioned earlier. The mini jobs either do discovery, for example, discovery of attack surface, or they do scanning for vulnerabilities, or they do exploitation of vulnerabilities. So we have done that many, we scheduled that many mini jobs and we completed them. And then we discovered 404 vulnerabilities. We were able to exploit 12 of them, and the attack surface size is 602. So I will show you some of the details in a minute. But first, let's look at the risks. So I'll just click on the risks, and these are the risks that we discovered on this Windows server. So of these, you see the example that I talk about, the remote command execution. This is the eternal blue. That's the nasty one. So let's take a quick look at that, see what we can find there. So, so as I mentioned earlier, whenever Ridgebot discovers a vulnerability, or whenever this Ridgebot exploits a vulnerability, we attempt to show proof to the user. The logic is very simple. Basically, what we say is, if Ridgebot is able to exploit vulnerability, then any user, any hacker out there will also be able to exploit this vulnerability. So notice here what I did. Ridgebot created a reverse shell from the target that it exploited successfully, which is a Windows server, back to itself. And then it basically gave me a shell, and I typed the dir command, and I'm seeing the files, I'm browsing the files on that server, on the Windows server. So this is actually pretty serious. You know, I would say when you ever get to this point, when a hacker gets to this point, it's game over. The hacker has full access to your Windows server at this point. They can browse anything they want. They can remove any file they want. They can delete information, or in case of ransomware, they can encrypt information. Your valuable, sensitive data, everything gets encrypted, and then they ask for ransom. So this is precisely what we're trying to demonstrate. We're saying that, look, if Ridgebot was able to get to this point, hackers will be able to get to this point. Therefore, you want to take action on all the discoveries that Ridgebot made, all the risks that we have listed here. This is a zero false positive risk table that we are showing here. Everything that you see here requires immediate action because everything here represents a vulnerability that is that can be exploited by the user. So here I clicked on a risk for SQL injection, and notice that we are showing you the database tables. Again, we extracted just enough information to demonstrate that hackers will also have same access to your sensitive data that you can see here. So let's go back to our task list. Let's take a look at the task that I started earlier. Notice that it has made some progress. Its score changed from the initial score of 100 to 39. Let's take a look at it while it is live and running. Notice that so far, one attack path was discovered. Let's go to the summary tab and see what's going on. So you can see here, I bring your attention to this section right here where the cursor is. So far, we have scheduled 2,000 plus mini jobs, and out of them, more than 700 have completed. Notice that as I'm talking about these numbers, they change. This is Ridgebrain, the AI-driven Ridgebrain, which is constantly processing the results of the mini jobs, and it is based on that scheduling new mini jobs to run. So so far we have discovered 24 vulnerabilities, and remember at the beginning when I opened this window we had 1 risk. Now it changed to 3 risks, and the attack surface at this point is 300. So everything is live. You know, we can click on each one of these and see. So let's take a look at the okay, the risk just changed to 6 as you saw. So so notice here so far we have discovered these 6. We were able to exploit 6 vulnerabilities. The one I'm looking for is not there yet. I'm looking for the one that I mentioned in the slide. So that will come a little bit later. That's the struts 2 remote command execution. However, we found remote command execution for WebLogic, for Oracle WebLogic, which is also very serious. And we found weak password. So, you know, weak credentials. So we will take a look at these later. So we'll give this a little bit more time. So far I've talked about attack surface. I just want to quickly show you what attack surface discovery by Ridgebot looks like. So each of these tasks that you see here includes attack surface. However, there is one specific task that I ran on multiple targets. So I'll go ahead and open that one. Again, this is something that I did yesterday just to have some data for today's webinar. So here we are showing that Ridgebot was able to, was asked to perform attack surface discovery on 4 different targets. And we go to the attack surface table. There are 3 types of attack surfaces that are discovered by Ridgebot. Here we're looking at port attack surface table. This is your standard port scanning. So Ridgebot scans for different ports. And then we also discovered the service behind each port. We don't assume that port 80 is always HTTP and port 22 is always SSH. For example, like right here, 8080, which is a non-standard port, is running HTTP. So we always examine to ensure that, to see what is the actual service running behind each port. And then we perform fingerprinting. We, for example, here for SSH, we discovered that on this particular asset .121, it's running OpenSSH version 8.2. And on this other target .75, it is running a different version of OpenSSH version 6.6, etc. So, so that's the port. That's one kind of attack surface. The second kind of attack surface is the site attack surface discovery that we do. So here we are showing all the different websites, and we have the we show the type of the web server if we can detect it. For example, Apache 247 version 247. etc. And then if we can detect the language, we also show that. So, like whether it's running PHP or Java, if we can detect the framework. In this example, we were not able to detect the framework. We show that, for example, Spring framework. We've seen some customers still running Java server pages, JSP, which is very old technology. So we will show all of that here. And the third kind of attack surface is the URL attack surface. So here we are showing a long list of URLs. You see, this is many pages to go, and each page being 20. So we are showing all the get and post URLs. So this is the third kind of attack surface. So I do want to mention one important thing. The attack surface discovery that Ridgebot provides is a free service. We don't charge for it. And the key reason is that we want to help our customers. We know that in security, visibility is the foundation. So we want to help our customers to gain that visibility so that they could focus on where the problems are. So we provide this service. Once you obtain a copy of Ridgebot, you can perform attack surface discovery on all your assets and generate a nice looking report, and then determine where you want to focus. And of course, when you ask Ridgebot to focus on pen testing, for example, on ransomware, on a variety of assets that you have, critical assets, then Ridgebot licensing will kick in. Then you have to have proper license in order to do that job. All right. So going back to our task, let's take a look and see how we are doing. Now we have 12 attack paths. So we discovered more risks. So let's see, and there we go. The task, the risk that I was looking for is already discovered. That's the Apache Struts 2 that I mentioned in the presentation. Let's open that and take a look. So, so again, I click on the terminal button here, and we have done similar thing that we did with the Windows server. We are basically, we created a reverse shell from the target to Ridgebot, and then we are allowing you to type any command you want. So we have some standard commands here, like I click on the system version button here, it ran the uname command. This happens to be Linux, as you can see. So it's telling me that it's running this version of Linux. So then I'll go ahead and type a Linux command. I type the ls-l, which is equivalent to the dir command in Windows, and it is showing me the list of all the files. Again, whenever you get to this point, if the hacker ever gets to this point, it's game over. They have access to your asset fully. They can extract any sensitive data from your server at this point. And in case of ransomware, they will do the most evil thing. They actually encrypt all your sensitive data and they ask for ransom. So let's take a look at some of the other vulnerabilities that we exploited. Let's take a look at this one, SSH weak password, because as you saw, weak credentials are very, very common. Okay, sorry, I went to another RCE, which is good. Let's take a look at one that is yeah, right here. So this one is a like you see here, that the type of risk is credential disclosure. So let's take a look at that. So here we're showing the actual weak credentials. We're showing the account name. The username is admin. And if I click here, the password that we were hiding, we're showing it. So the password is ghost in this case. And the password for this other one is also ghost. So the combination of guest, username guest, password ghost, username admin, password ghost, very weak combination. So not a good idea. So Ridgebot has a dictionary of usernames and passwords per protocol, per application. It is populated with some default entries, and you can either remove all the entries and add your own, or you can just add more to it. We have populated with some of the common ones that we are aware of, and you can configure it. You can add more to it if you would like. since our task is running still, I won't be able to generate the report for it, but I created a similar task yesterday, and that already completed. So I'll go ahead and create a report so you see what our report looks like. So here I click on the report button, and here you will see there are a number of different templates available for the report. So I'll go ahead and select custom, which is a flexible one. This allows me to select what type of content I want, whether I want executive summary only and remove all the details, or whether I want to remove, for example, the low vulnerability, low CVSS score vulnerabilities, etc. So let's go ahead and keep everything for this demo. So I'll go ahead and say generate the report. You will see how easy it is to generate a very detailed, professional looking report just by clicking a couple of buttons. So the report just got generated. Now I go to the reports tab. It's the top entry. It's still finishing creation of the PDF file using all the data that it just exported. And as soon as it finishes, then we will go ahead and download the report. All right, so it finished. I click on download. So here we provide the option, since the report contains a lot of sensitive information, we provide the option to basically encrypt the report, to enter a passcode. It's always recommended to do that. But for this demo, in order to see the report right away, I just go ahead and say create it without encrypting it. So here the report is generated. Let's scroll down. You see the executive summary, very concise executive summary. We are showing you the score, which is again a number between 0 and 100. It is showing that for this particular task, which contained only one asset, the score is 13, which is not very good. So color coded, it is red. And then we are showing the total number of vulnerabilities that we found, 816. So 800 medium and 16 high CVSS score vulnerabilities. And out of them, 8 of them were exploited by Ridgebot. And so here we're seeing the breakdown of the type of exploitations. As you remember, there were 2 types of exploitations that we had: remote command execution, RCE, and weak credentials. So you can see that bulk of the exploitations were RCEs. And then we have detailed information. Basically, we have all the attack surface types listed here, such as open ports and website information, etc. And then finally, we get to the details of the exploits. There are, we discovered multiple, we were able to exploit multiple vulnerabilities, which we call business risks. And here we're showing detailed information about them. We start with the standard information that you're familiar with. For example, the CVSS score, CVSS vector, the description of the vulnerability, the remediation for the vulnerability, etc. And then we follow that with most valuable information. We have detailed kill chain analysis information, as you can see. So here we are showing step by step, what did Ridgebot do in order to exploit this particular vulnerability? So we have the detailed kill chain. This is one of the features that sets us apart from competition. Very valuable information. And then we repeat that for each vulnerability that we successfully exploited. I forget how many. I think there were a total of 12. So we repeat that for each one. All right, so so that is the report. Now going back to our task, there is one thing also I forgot to show when we were looking at the Windows Server. Remember we talked about 3 different vulnerabilities that I wanted to bring to your attention. So 2 of them I have shown you so far. One of them is the Eternal Blue, which is a Windows one. The other one was the RCE for Struts 2, which is a Linux one. The third one is also on Windows, and it's Print Nightmare. So here I'm looking at all the vulnerabilities we discovered on the Windows Server, and I just do a search. I put in the keyword print, and it finds exactly that particular one. So here we're showing the print nightmare vulnerability that we discovered, CVSS score of 8.8 that I was talking about. All right, so with that, I'm going to go back to our presentation, just a couple of quick summary points. So we covered this already. So as a CISO, basically, it's important that you're always one step ahead of the hacker. You want to be protecting your revenue. You want to be reducing the risk. Again, Ridgebot discovers risk, so you want to be reducing the risk. You want to control the cost. And most importantly, you want to adopt new habits, better habits, such as continuous assessment of your security posture, ideally by using an automated security testing tool such as Ridgebot. So please feel free to send us email at inquiry@ridgesecurity.ai, or to look us up on social media, as you can see. And we have a few minutes. Let me just quickly see if there were any questions. All right, so there is one question, which is a very good one. I should have actually covered this. So the question is, what if some vulnerabilities come into existence, for example, for ransomware, and Ridgebot doesn't support them? So I did mention that we have a, let me also do this. Let me close the presentation so we can see the screen again. So I did mention that we have the ability to we have an extensible infrastructure. It allows us to create and release plugins on a dynamic basis. But I forgot to mention that we release our plugin library every 2 weeks. So let's say that there is a new ransomware, there's a new vulnerability that ransomware attackers start exploiting, and Ridgebot doesn't support that today. Then Ridgebot will basically add a new plugin. I will show you the list of the plugins. So here you can see 270 plugins for the ransomware scenario. Then Ridgebot will add plugin number 271, and then it would release that that plugin library right away. That's precisely what we did when Log4j vulnerability came out. In less than a week, we released a plugin library with the plugins required for detecting and exploiting the Log4j vulnerability. So, and if there are no new vulnerabilities like that, regardless, we are always releasing our plugin library every other week. So every 2 weeks, there's a new version of the plugin library that Ridge Security releases, because things continue to evolve. There is also one other question. I'll just take 1 minute to answer that question. The question is, do you also support external pen testing? The answer is yes. In fact, we always recommend that you do both internal pen testing and external pen testing. So internal pen testing, I'll just, for the benefit of those who didn't ask this question, internal pen testing refers to you placing Ridgebot on the same subnet, for example, as your targets. So you're not subjected to firewall or WAF. So Ridgebot has direct access to your targets. That's a good testing that you can do. You can do pen testing without the firewall being in the middle. In addition, it's also good to do external pen testing so that you put Ridgebot on the internet, and then Ridgebot would try to attack your sensitive targets, your sensitive assets, critical assets from the outside, just like a hacker would do. So here there is one example. Notice that the target for this particular task is a public URL. So I created this task yesterday again, just to demonstrate that Ridgebot can do external pen testing as well. So here we are showing in a graphical way the attack surface that we discovered for this external server. You can see these are all live links. This is the attack surface. And then the ones where we were able to exploit, we are showing as red. So so that's all the information. So I apologize. We are 2 minutes over. If there are other questions that you didn't get a chance to ask, by all means, please feel free to send us email or to contact us. Go to our website. There's contact information. We'll be happy to answer any questions that you have. And I wish you a wonderful day ahead. Thank you.